I'm not that relevant to too many people's lives other than my family, my daughter and son-in-laws and my grandsons and my son, being able to spend more time with them than I ever have. There are days they don't think that that's great, but that's more important to me in terms of relevance today and significance than anything else. Is I hate to say it, but it's almost like making up for lost time.
Welcome to Your Next Big Project is You, a podcast based around the theme of time. Time to be able to press pause on life. Time to reevaluate what's important. Time to reminisce about where you've come from, what you've learned, and what you've accomplished. Time to revisit your goals, dreams, and vision. And time to remember the people in your life. That's it, my friends. If you've got time, fasten your seatbelt and listen in as we discuss opportunities for the next 5 to 25 years of your life. And remember, your next big project is you.
Welcome to our podcast. Your next big project is you. And I've got a very special guest, a very, very close friend of mine that I've known for a good decade. Had an opportunity to work with him, saw how he led, how he managed, how he coached, how he led from his heart to help people. He digged in, he unzipped the zipper of their hearts, or on their chest, as I like to say. He reached in and he touched their hearts. My good friend, Andrew Tappe, thank you for joining me today, my friend. Oh, thank you for having me, Leo. It's great to see you again. Yeah, it's been so good to work with you over the last decade. I know you made an important career decision for yourself. It was time to move on. Your next big project, as we say, became Andrew Tappe. You left the corporate world and decided to do some things, but I believe a good place to start, Andrew. You've got such an interesting background and a journey to success and the things that you've done and the cool things that you're doing today. Tell us more about that career journey. Let's get started there today. Well, that's a journey that goes way back. And for many people, you probably remember the early 80s. I came out of the University of New Hampshire in 1983 and went to work late in the year of 1983. I went to work for Xerox Corporation, which Leo and I and another good friend share some common ground there. And this was a time when interest rates were high. I think prime was well above 12. Unemployment was high, and the economy was struggling some. And it was also a time when that era of companies taking care of their employees fully with full medical and full pensions. Well, the pendulum was starting to shift, where the advent of the 401k was starting to replace the pension savings, and medical costs were beginning to be shared between the employer and the employee. I came into a company that had been having its lunch eaten by the Japanese, and it was had been set in its ways, but it had a new CEO named David Kearns, who was really focused on winning market share back from the Japanese. And in 1987, Xerox became the first American company to win back market share from the Japanese, and primarily, the Canons, the Noltas, the Ricos. And they did it by putting a maniacal focus on quality. And in the late 7, Xerox won the Malcolm Baldrige Award for that, and had a good run for a while. I was there until 1996. But I learned a lot at Xerox. We had a great reputation. We had to sell value because, the Japanese were selling their products for what it cost us to make a product. And so you had to build trust. You had to build relationships across the small businesses, at least that I started working with. And then as I moved through sales ranks, the bigger and bigger companies. But, there was at one point early in my career, I was selling typewriters against IBM as part of my advanced products. And I remember an administrative assistant saying to me, I'll never get fired for buying an IBM Selectric. And to tell you how far back we went. And I would confidently say, well, I don't believe you'll ever get fired for buying a Xerox copier or printer. And it was, we were at the same time focusing on the quality of our products. But one of the things I learned there as well is that Xerox put an awful lot of responsibility on its leaders to be good HR practitioners and to, learn to build good, strong relationships that were based on trust with their employees and with their teams, and to value the diversity of their teams. We talk about diversity and inclusion today, but I remember having a team in the early 90s, and it was mostly women, some of whom were single moms. And we had one of the top performing teams in the country. And there were people of color as well on the team. And it was just a given that, if you were going to represent your company in a geographic area, you had to kind of mirror what that geography looked like. And so with vertical markets, insurance companies, banks, financial services, and one of those companies was Fidelity. And working in a company that was based in Rochester, New York, my next step was to leave the Boston area and go to Rochester. And family was growing, and I said, I don't know if I want to relocate. I know Rochester is a great place to raise a family, but I'd kind of like to stay in Boston and work for a company that's based in Boston that has a great reputation, has great brand, and that was Fidelity. And I found myself at Fidelity in 2001. My first interview at Fidelity was on 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Not 9/11 at 9 a.m. And that obviously was cut short and had quite a few more interviews after that. But it was a career that started the Charitable Gift Fund, which is a donor advised fund. I was there for a couple of years, and then I went into our personal investing business, the retail side of our business, and did had a number of different roles there, from building a team of planning consultants and wholesalers that represented both the Fidelity and non-Fidelity branded solutions that really, at the end of the day, were designed to support our clients and our advisors. I had also an opportunity to get into the tax-exempt business in 2009, where we placed lots of people across the country in hospitals and universities to help their employees plan and get prepared for retirement and to understand the benefits that they had. At the same time, I was also leading part of our retirement business, the IRAs and the 529 businesses. So I learned a lot there. And then in 2012, I joined the distribution organization as head of sales, and benefited certainly from a tremendous bull market and a great team of people around me and a great group of associates that helped us achieve fantastic growth levels that I'm very proud of. And certainly at the time, really was lucky to have such an experienced, seasoned team of people around me. So,
Yeah.
well, 5 years or so ago, I was asked, there was an opportunity for an early retirement program, and it crossed my mind, but I felt I still had a lot to do. But this early program, this new program came around again in December, or actually announced in the spring of last year. And I enrolled for it, and eventually stayed with the company through the end of last year. And yes, to your points earlier, it's what the next steps is, right? It has been all about me.
Yeah.
And
It's like looking in the mirror, right now, buddy.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. I remember fondly the things regarding leadership through quality. Think about all the commitment to organizational excellence from Xerox to Fidelity, how blessed you were to work with two absolute world-class companies that were committed to do the best they could to serve clients, serve customers in ways to do that. So I just wanted to bridge over, because I worked so closely with you for many years here. And I know that you assisted many by leading, by managing, by coaching over the years, from traveling with you to branches, to phone centers and things that you and I connected on, you demanded excellence. I saw it firsthand. You just expected people to be on their game. You raised the bar. I wanted just to reach in to get more of your philosophies and how you felt about just challenging people to go from good to great, from great to extraordinary. And that's what I felt every time you walked in the room. People knew that, hey, we better be on our game today. So I want to hear more about your philosophies around excellence and leading people, managing and coaching in your day.
Well, thanks. And I remember those days when you were leading some great initiatives for us and facilitating and leading some great training. Um, and I felt that anytime we did something like that for our associates, it was a unbelievable benefit for them and eventually their clients. And the amount in what we were investing in them, certainly, my expectation was that we get a good yield from it. And but I think I don't know so much as I demanded it, like maybe expected it. But what I learned over the years too, Leo, was that not everybody has the same ticker, and not everybody is driven by the same things that we are. And the faster I could figure that out by individual, the easier I could connect the dots. And I've always felt that the job of the leader is to connect what the vision of the firm is and the strategy of the firm is to their work, and why their work is so important and so connected to that vision and the strategy of the firm. And the last thing you ever want to hear from an associate is, so why are you doing this? Oh, it's because Leo's told me I need to do it, or it's because an individual told me I need to do this. Versus, oh, well, it's really important that we achieve the highest levels of client loyalty, because competition has never been stronger, and they're nipping at our heels in this area, or some to that effect, where they could connect why we were doing the training and such. But so if you can provide context as to why we are asking them to invest their precious time in a session such as with you, Leo, or any session that one of my leaders was leading, I think you're halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah. What happened in your decision process? Because I know you contemplated it 5 years earlier that they were putting a package together, let's say, in terms of offering an opportunity for some folks to look at the next phase of their life a little bit earlier. You stayed on, though. You were obviously motivated to continue to pursue the challenges and to help the organization and people that you saw. What were some of the tipping points in your decision process a few years ago that your inner voice said, no, Andrew, it's not time to leave. I got more work to be done. What was going through your head then?
Well, I was a lot younger. And I obviously had never thought about stopping, and I hadn't thought about doing anything else. That was one. We had a great plan that went beyond 2022, and I had an opportunity to be working with great leaders, and I had all the enablers around me for continued success. And I said, so why would you walk away from that? And so even when I did make the decision 5 years later, there's still a great team of leaders and great people, but I was just really fired up to keep things going. I had a relatively half my team was relatively new. I felt I owed it to them to continue to help develop their skills and help them achieve what they were dreaming to do. And I think those are probably the 2 or 3 things that really stuck there. And I don't think my family was ready for me to have all the free time I do today.
Yeah. The story, and I tell this to people now in our program, and I speak about you in your decision to finally move on, the next big project being Andrew Tappe. And one of the things that resonated with me when you told me, I believe it was like December 31st, if I got the story right, that you probably got, give or take, 500 emails a day. People depending on you, people relying on you, people keeping the loop, people needing your advice, people needing your help and making important decisions. And all of a sudden, Happy New Year. It's January 1st, January 2nd, you wake up. And I know the same people cared about you. Some people loved you. Some people respected you. but from 500 emails, give or take, to 2 to 3 to 4. Well, what was that like for you when you woke up on January 2nd, 3 or 4 days later?
Well, it was almost a relief, but it was definitely it was humbling, because everyone's lives go on, and while you were part of their lives at work and you were helping them or being a part of their business every day, you're not at the center of it. And I never thought that I was, but it was a reminder on January 2nd about how engulfed you are in your work, and how you just don't realize how much of your life takes up. And so when you wake up without it that next day, it's time for it. You reflect more than you thought you would. So the texts, obviously, the texts are increased daily, and so do personal emails. Planning events and trips and things like that. But I miss it. There's things you certainly I'll always miss. But someone asked me what it was like, and I said, well, I used to remember very clearly whether it was the last day of the vacation or a Sunday afternoon. You'd had a great weekend, or a great week of vacation, and then it would settle in that, wow, that time is done, and now I got to go back into this routine. And the difference now today is Sunday comes, or an end of a week comes, and there's more of it. there's just more of it to do. So
wow, I kept reliving that in a couple ways. My first podcast guest, one of my dear brothers, Bob Doherty, who retired from Price Waterhouse, described it in his years of being on a career like a selfish rocket ship, where he was just moving. It was just taking off and going to the next level of responsibility and things that he had to accomplish, and time demands, and away from his family, and travel, and all the things that I know you've experienced in your 3 to 4 decades of your career and things. And the other way I looked at it was like driving down the Massachusetts Turnpike or the New York State Thruway, and you're going around, to your place in Cape Cod or whatever, and you're traveling 65, 70 miles an hour, and all of a sudden you just put your foot on the brakes, and it just literally stops to do that. So I kept thinking as either visual metaphors or life metaphors around that. So now you're living this life of significance, as we might say, but you were living it before. This isn't something that just started for you now. I know you've been doing your best to make a difference in people's lives since I've known you, and I'm sure way beyond, in terms of when I was privileged to get to know you. You talk about significance and the shift as well to the continuation of relevance. Talk to me more about how you see those two words.
Well, I learned back in 2008 or 9. I had an opportunity to take a different role that turned out to be a really smart thing to do. And I talked to my good friend Dick Lyons, who was the CFO of Personal Investing, and I said, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, "Well, so many people get caught up in, what's my new title going to be, and what's my responsibility going to be, and how and everything else." And he goes, "Andrew, the most important thing that you should take into consideration around a new opportunity is how relevant you're going to be to the organization." And there are lots of people that have chased the titles, and today you can't find them because they're really not that relevant to the business. And you want to keep that thread close to ensure you're part of it. And that I always pass that on to folks, because I always had high potential leaders and individuals on my teams that were always being approached from different parts of the business or even outside the business. And I said, how important is the relevancy of your job to the success of the organization, and how's that going to affect you if people ask, what do you do? And you have to explain what part of the company you're in or whatnot. So, and I felt my relevance also related to other people's success. And, today, while I'm not getting all the lots of emails from my former company, I am getting calls and emails from former colleagues asking, "Hey, I have this opportunity, or I'm one of 2 final candidates for this role. What do you suggest?" And I get a lot of motivates me a lot to be able to help and pass on, 38 years of experience or pieces of it to people if they contemplate different opportunities. Because I mean, the growth of my former company is phenomenal right now. Job opportunities are abundant, and you want to make sure that, if you're doing a great job in a great part of the company today, if you leave it, make sure that you go to a great opportunity, because you leave that opportunity once. So I'm getting, I'm kind of babbling here a little bit, but in my current state, it's there's nothing really significant I'm doing. I'm not that relevant to too many people's lives other than my family, my daughter and son-in-laws and my grandsons and my son. Being able to spend more time with them than I ever have. There are days they don't think that that's great, but that's more important to me in terms of relevance today and significance than anything else. Is I hate to say it, but it's almost like making up for lost time.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to sum it up from that perspective. See, I look at it, and having the privilege to meet Callie, your daughter. I'm having the privilege to meet your son, but now I know you got a new grandson. And so to me, excuse me, that whole issue of significance, and now whether we call it relevance,
Yep.
the lost time, it seems to be focused on your son, your daughter, your grandson right now. And I know you're doing something really cool with your grandson that reflects back on your
Yep.
growing up, the things that you remember, and the impact that you're trying to make at an early age now. Tell us about that.
Well, I was fortunate to grow up with a mom and dad who had grown up, and my mother in particular had grown up all over the world, and um, and I spent most of my youth in South America, and then when I went to college, my folks were in France. So, I was born in Peru. I lived in Ecuador, Venezuela. I lived in Mexico City, and Spanish was my first language. So it hit something that I believe, it was a gift, frankly, in my travels. It was a gift and the moving around as a kid also, I think, made me made me adapt to change far quicker and easier, because of all the change I went through as a kid. It was just a norm, and uprooting and going into new places. Explaining when you're an adult, hey, so where'd you grow up, or where's your hometown, and explaining that. Well, there were quite a few. It was obviously had a huge impact on my life. So what I want to do is I only speak to my grandson in Spanish. And I know he's probably really confused and is thinking to himself, like, he's only 7.5 months old. He's probably thinking, who's this guy that just doesn't sound like anybody else? But it's fun. It's fun. And that'll be a project of mine, as it will be with any future other grandchildren. So that I think there's just parts of your brain when you engage them, kind of open up different points of view and make you a more accepting and with a broader perspective than if you had. So that's a fun project I have ahead of me.
Well, it's funny. Growing up, my dad was a Sicilian immigrant. He came over in 1924. And I remember fondly all my Sicilian grandparents and going for that Sunday meal when I was a young kid. And one of my regrets is that I only learned the words or phrases that they didn't want me to know what they were saying. It's more on the swear words or the slang or stuff like this. But the commentary of them talking and seeing my grandparents speak fluently in Italian as you grew up speaking Spanish are the things I wish that I had spent more time on. It's so nice that you can have that impact on your grandson right out of the gate, and hopefully some other grandchildren to follow if you're so blessed with your son and your daughter. So, just to finish this up, Andrew, I see your life from the minute I met you. Just to me, he's full of excitement and adventure. I've always thought you were this Renaissance guy that, whether you're showing excellence and leading, managing, coaching, whether you're on a tennis court, whether you're on a golf course, whether you're fly fishing, whether you're flying to some part of the world with friends of yours, doing cool and fun things, just living life to the fullest. Uh, to me, part of your legacy is living a life with enthusiasm and energy and with a motor that just doesn't stop, that is experiencing life to the fullest. That's when I think of you, that's what I think of as we finish this off today. I'm curious, a lot of my work, as you know, in my new project gets into issues from significance to no regrets to living a life with abundance, your time, your talent, your treasure, to having perspective, things that you have and others don't, to being your best, to having gratitude every day, living Thanksgiving, literally, 365 days a year. And I think of from the legacy, I'm curious, are there other things besides your children, your grandchild now, and all these travels and fun, cool things that you're doing? What you can do to make even more of an impact in the future? What do you think's waiting out there for you? If I had to take a legacy question in terms of what's waiting out there, do you think you got any sense of that in terms of all the cool things that you're doing these days that's waiting for you to impact?
Well, I think that maybe, I don't see myself having much a different role in the next year than I do right now. I've the same way you set goals for yourself when you're working. I set some goals to do some things that I couldn't do when I was working full time. So, and I'm gonna, maybe do some more travel to places I haven't been. I'll say it again, maybe do some more travel with my family that I hadn't done in the past. But then after that, Leo, there's this is a rapidly changing economy, a rapidly changing relationship between employee and employer. And I'm fortunate enough, obviously, with the start of COVID, got to work in that environment and actually see unbelievable improvements in productivity and actually work-life balance even couldn't have been achieved in traditional setup. So I think I have something to offer from my experience successfully working remotely in a hybrid manner and not. And you know, whether it's consulting or whether it's part-time work, that's maybe a year and a half down the road. I get approached all the time for it, and I sometimes have to say this is just not the right time.
Yeah. I just think when someone connects the dots with you on maybe even something transformative, it's almost like our good friend David Coyne that you worked for years and that I look up to as a business client of mine, always said, there's going to be things that you might be doing right now. I know when he talks to the folks at the firm, when he says there might be a job that you might be in 5 years from now, you don't even know exists today, that we don't even have today. That's going to happen. I got a sense that probably is going to happen in your life and in my life in terms of opportunities. I believe if we had another good friend on this call today, and I'll mention his name, our good buddy Joe Corcoran, who you worked with for many years, who's one of our friends that I know that we both love and value so much. I believe if Joe were by my side today as two of your business partners and friends, as part of your legacy would be know that you have always been there, even beyond the business. And I know that if we needed a friend to talk to, if we needed somebody to counsel, we needed some advice, with those 500 or so emails a day, I knew that if I really needed your ear or your thoughts, I knew that you'd always be there. And maybe it might take a couple days, whatever, but I knew you cared about the people that were in your life, in your Rolodex, that were part of this. So I believe that's going to be part of your legacy. You're always there for people to help and to guide them and to help in their quest to seek excellence in their own life. So I want to thank you for that because you've always been there for me.
Well, you're very kind. I had a very good administrative assistant.
Now,
I remember sitting down with her, and you go, these are typically the kind of things we put to the side that are, we'll put on the back burner, but these are the people that we need to make sure we get back to right away.
Yeah, well,
Certainly.
you did it, and I can't thank you enough. And I really appreciate your time and your and sharing of all your career insights and some of your life insights and what life looks for you now and in the future. And your daughter and your son and your grandson are very blessed to have you in your life. And I wish you all the best, buddy. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Leo.
I thought, like watching Bill Maher's show on HBO, that he has an overtime. So after the interview, he's focusing on a couple of other final takeaways. So Andrew, let's bridge there, because I know there's a couple of other things that you wanted to share. And let's make sure we cover those before we sign off today. Andrew, one other thought I know you and I talked about was that span from the Xerox days to Fidelity days and all the changes that were going around. You saw them in your perspective on how people needed to embrace change, to some of the key learnings that you got in the latter part of your career. Tell us more about that.
Well, so I got the Xerox in 1983, and as I mentioned, it was going through tremendous change, really focusing on quality and trying to win back this market share that they had lost to the Japanese. But at the same time, the relationship between the company and the employee was changing in terms of who bore the costs of, medical care, and there was obviously a shift in a big growth in 401ks replacing pension plans. And I found that for the tenured salespeople I was working with, those with 20 plus years, there were two groups: those that understood why, and maybe a leader had taken the time to really explain it to them well, and then there were those that didn't embrace it and resented it and felt that they were being taken advantage of. And those that embraced it and had understood it continued to thrive. But those that resented it, they were fighting. They were like pushing string up the hill, and it affected their performance. And eventually, they retired, not in the best of terms, perhaps. But for me, the lesson was take the time to understand what the strategy is, and as a leader, take the time to connect the dots, because it can have a significant impact on the lives of those. Because fear creates, it results in lots of bad. It results in a lot of bad outcomes.
Yeah.
And ignorance comes from that too. So that was the first lesson I got. And then later on, when I'm the new leader at Fidelity, we sat down with one of the executives that reported to Mr. Johnson, and he took the time to share with us that there were two things that were really important to have in your career, whether it was at Fidelity or anywhere else. And that was to make sure that things were good at home and that you had your health. And I lived it firsthand. There was a time in my career where things weren't good at home, and work was never harder for me than it was then. And so that's from an experience standpoint. I also tell all my good leaders, all my leaders, that take the time to personally get to know the people on your team, because there will come a time when they need you to understand that there's not everything great at home, or they're having health issues, and that it's going to impact their work. And the better they can feel about, and the better they trust you to support them through that, the better the outcome will be.